Welcome back to the Fundamentals of Object workshop. This is the Introduction to Timeline Objects, and in this lesson, we'll discuss timeline objects and how they're used in Ursa Studio. Timeline objects have two important properties: tracking entities across time and non-overlappingness. First, timeline objects describe an entity, like a patient, over time. A patient may have multiple periods in their timeline describing changing characteristics of that patient across time. For example, imagine a patient with multiple comorbidities who exists in your data across a 1-year period from January 1st, 2020 to January 1st, 2021. Let's say that over the course of the year, the patient progresses through several stages of chronic kidney disease. They progress from being a CKD stage 2 patient in the beginning of the year to being stage 3 as of April 1st, stage 4 as of July 1st, stage 5 as of October 1st, and so on. We would capture that progression in a timeline object. The object would have 4 records for the patient. The first record would capture the time during which the patient was at stage 2. The second record would capture the time period in which the patient moved to stage 3. The third record would capture stage 4, and so on. Each of these records would describe the patient's changing characteristics over time. The second property of timeline objects is that the time periods captured by each record are non-overlapping. Using the example above, the timeline object enforces the reality that a patient cannot be CKD stage 2 and stage 3 simultaneously. The object does this by ensuring that each record associated with a patient does not overlap with another record associated with the same patient. So, timeline objects describe an entity, like a patient, over time as the characteristics of that entity might change. The object also ensures that for the changing characteristics of the entity, like a patient progressing through CKD stages, each characteristic is captured in a non-overlapping interval. Like other objects created in Ursa Studio, the ultimate purpose of timeline objects is to serve in the creation of measures. As we've discussed, the structure of measures is based on numerator-denominator relationships, where the denominator represents an opportunity for performance, and the numerator represents the realization of the opportunity. The numerator and denominator are essential ingredients of the measure, but the measure's relationship to time and the ability to monitor measure results over time is what enables us to gauge performance. Timeline objects help structure data to be consumed by measures with different relationships to time. Like objects, measures have temporal structures that are used in measure development. For measures where the unit of observation is an event, the data structure needed to create the measure is relatively straightforward. You have an event, which has a date, and you'll assign the event into a reporting period. When aggregated alongside all other events in the same reporting period, you can generate a run chart to show the results over time. So a measure that calculates a 30-day readmission rate uses an object within which each record is a distinct event. In this scenario, overlapping time periods are not a concern. Other measures require a more complex data structure to build. When a measure's basic unit of observation is an entity, like a patient, not an event, like an admission, then we need a timeline object to create the measure. For example, imagine a measure like among CKD patients, the percentage currently enrolled in program X. The numerator for this measure, CKD patient enrollment in program X, could be evaluated on any day. To show the results of this measure over time, you'll need to be able to evaluate both the denominator and the numerator at various points in time. We call these various points in time snapshot dates, which represent the moment when the patient is evaluated using the standards of the measure. We'll talk more about creating these snapshot dates in the future, but keep in mind that these measures typically require a timeline object to construct. The third type of measure that has a relationship to time is one with periods of time marked by start and end dates. For example, a per member per month measure. Here, the denominator observations are not single events or entities with snapshot dates. These observations are periods of time, where the length of that time is important for the calculation of the measure result. These measures rely on timeline objects to help accurately calculate results. For example, imagine a per member per month measure where the denominator for a particular patient is 6 months, the period of time when the patient was in a plan's population. Even if that patient incurs a $1,000 expense in a single month and no expenses in other months, the calculation of PM for this single patient would be 1,000 divided by 6. By keeping track of the denominator's time periods, timeline objects allow us to accurately generate measure results. That's it for this lesson, so let's pause there. And don't worry if you feel like you've not mastered the temporal structures that we just reviewed, because we'll review these again in the courses on measure creation. For now, I just wanted to introduce the topic while we're defining timeline objects. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.